Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order Farmington Board of Education regular meeting for Monday night, January 27th. I would ask you to all to rise with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight is a special time in the Board of Ed calendar where our state representative delegation has an opportunity to come to speak to us and give us updates about what's happening in the legislature before their session begins in earnest. So I'd like to invite forward, if I could, our state senator, Derek Slapp, our state senator, Rick Lopez, and our state representative, Mike D'Amico. Rick's not here? Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't see him actually. So. And Rebecca Martinez, one of our other state representatives, is on her way. So please come forward. But before you, I just want to recognize our town chair. Welcome to our meeting tonight, Joe Capitano. Thank you for joining us tonight, Joe. So please come up. Thank you.
Where would you like us?
Well, that's the thing. I'm not a big fan of our meeting space here.
We go to different places in the high school so everyone can see all the bright spaces.
How do you want it? What do you think is best?
You know, right by the golf.
Right by the front
We're gonna hold money, get extra $30 million.
That's right. We would like to add a golf course to the high school project, please. An addendum. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I
know you guys
don't
are
want to
pretty
stand
busy.
in front of you. Do you want us to stand or what? You tell us, whatever.
Yeah,
Can I get start with these chairs?
sure. Why don't we do that?
Better
Why don't we
two
have you sit
chairs
down
here.
with chairs up front?
Remember Rebecca.
Bring you around. Thank you, Beth.
Apologize that our back is. Sorry about this. Boring covers.
I forgot to put meeting space in the library on our plan. I know you guys, this is a short session or a long session?
Long session.
Long session, okay. So you guys got a lot on the agenda. I know my colleagues have questions for you guys tonight. Maybe if I can just have you guys open it up a little bit, kind of tell us what you've been working on so far. What do you see are some of the challenges just generally? And then what are the things you might see that might be affecting Farmington individually? And then after I think we do that, then I'll kind of open up the questions for my colleagues.
Yeah, I can jump in. Please. Yeah, so one, thanks for having us here. And what a great place to have a meeting, huh? I mean, this is, I don't think I'm done celebrating it yet. I mean, it's just walking in and through, it's just absolutely amazing. So I think it's so appropriate to have this meeting with all of you, because what a team effort it was for all of you and the whole community, and we were glad to play a part in it too. So anyways, just awesome. So yeah, as you mentioned, the session started. Thankfully, you know, the biggest debates that you're going to hear, I think, this session are, you know, what to do with the surplus. Do we save it? How much of it do we save, right? Do we put it into education and local communities, et cetera? But we're not debating about, you know, raising taxes or making cuts or putting the teachers' pension funds on the towns and all those things that we've all been through together in really challenging times. So I think that's the good thing, right? That said, we do have, you know, a lot of challenges at the state. I'm on 6 committees. 2 of them are brand new. One is a government oversight committee, and the other is a committee which will be of particular interest to you all, and that's the special education committee. And so we actually had one of our meetings just today, and we can talk more about that as the meeting goes on. So special education is going to be a big focus of mine, and again, happy to get into kind of more details about that. And then another big focus also touches on education, and that's, as chair of the higher education committee, one of my big focuses is going to be really revamping and overhauling our public scholarship program. It's called the Roberta Willis Scholarship Program. It's for a long time lawmaker who was a real advocate for higher education. And right now, you know, we're one of the only states in the area that really doesn't guarantee for eligible students a public scholarship. And so we have 2/3 of our eligible students, many of whom go to high school right here, who are going to be told there is no help for you from the state. And this is from, thank you, for Connecticut students going to Connecticut colleges. That's what this is for. And it's for middle income and low income families There's a need component to it, and then a need merit. So there's kind of two parts of it. But anyway, so this is Senate Bill 5 this year, which that means I somehow convinced the leadership of the Senate to make it a big priority as well. So I'm very excited about that. We're going to be hearing that bill, public hearing on February 20th. And so if any of you are interested in coming, and we'd love to have a Farmington presence there. But this is really going to extend the on-ramp for higher education to thousands and thousands of students who don't have access to it right now. We've already done that for our community colleges through our debt-free community college program, but we haven't really done a significant increase for our four-year program. So that's going to be another one on the higher ed side. I could keep going, but I can't off the mic. Maybe just before I do, I'll just tell you the other committees that I'm on if I can remember them all. So government oversight, higher education, public safety, public health as well. It's the vice chair of public safety. What did I miss? Oh yeah, and the government oversight one. So yeah, it's a lot, but happy to be here and answer your questions and make sure we're aligned, going into what will be a long session. We end in June, so beginning of June, since it's a 2-year budget. Mike?
So, thank you again for inviting us. I always appreciate it, and we always appreciate being able to come here and have a discussion. So Derek touched on some of the initiatives that he's working on. Unfortunately, I am neither on the Higher Education Committee, although I was for a short time, nor the Education Committee, but I'm on a couple of committees that I think you will find to be interesting and relevant. I'm on the Public Health Committee, and certainly a lot of issues are going to come before that committee this year, having to do with retention of medical personnel, having to do with affordability of health care. Any kind of public health issues always come in front of that committee. Also on the Human Services Committee, and one of the big things that we're going to be tackling in the Human Services Committee is an increase in potential, hopeful increase in Medicaid rates. Because as you know, as you may know, Medicaid rates have not been changed in years here in Connecticut, and if you want, if you want yourselves and your family members to get good quality care, you have to pay for it, and the government has to pay for it in many instances, and the Medicaid rates have been too low for way too long, and we need to do something about that. So again, I don't think that's going to directly affect you here at the Board of Education in Farmington, but that's going to be a really big issue in front of the legislature this year. The other big issues that I see have to do with energy affordability and energy supply. And again, I'm on the Energy and Technology Committee, so that'll be something I'll be involved in. Housing. We have a housing crisis in Connecticut. I don't think that's news to anybody, and we need to figure out ways to increase the housing stock and make it affordable for people to live here. And of course, housing drives everything. If you can't afford to live here, then you're not going to be employed here, and so it affects the whole economic structure. So anyhow, those are some of the important things that we're going to be working on. But you guys want to talk about education, I suspect. So anyhow.
Okay, I'm going to start down this here. Marty, have any questions for you guys? No. Eric, any questions?
So, hello. This is an area of space that I'm, you probably see me there at the legislature. I'm very interested, and so even though this is not necessarily for the Medicaid rates, I think there's a big component of work that's also being done at the legislature around school behavioral health services, and that very much impacts our students in general, no matter what grade level they are in. And so I know that there are some proposals also looking at children's behavioral health, and specifically in the arena of school access from the schools, here to back into the community. And so, my question, I think, Mike, this goes into the school, the Medicaid rates in general, because I think that there is some discussion about how we're paying for our behavioral health services, and I know that there is some creativity, that may not be the right word, but there are some other ways in which schools are being able to bill for certain access for services for children on the behavioral health side. And I know in Farmington we're getting ready to pilot something. We just heard about this last month But I think that there is a significant need in the state of Connecticut, no matter whether it be Farmington or anywhere else in Connecticut, for access to behavioral health services for our students in general. So that the more that we can support sort of either co-location of behavioral health services within schools, or being able to advertise and get the word out about access to those behavioral health services, whether it be urgent crisis care centers that were opened up in Connecticut. I think there was 5 of them. One of them is very close to us here in Hartford, but being able to get the word out about how to access those services, and then the continued support for those behavioral health services for children is going to be very important, because if they're not emotionally well, they're not going to be able to perform in school. If they're not, if they're experiencing crisis, their families are experiencing crisis, and then they cannot do well again in school. So all of that does very much impact their educational services and how well they do in our school buildings and in our school environment. So I think that whatever the legislature and you all can do to continue to support the access to those behavioral health services for our students, I think it's going to be very critical.
We did do legislation a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
It was House Bill 5001.
5001,
Yeah, that was,
yeah.
you all know Tammy Action, who was
Yeah.
representing part of Farmington. She authored that bill, and
Hopefully you're seeing some of the benefits of that bill now.
Yeah.
I hope. I mean, that's.
I'm
yeah.
the administrator for that bill, so, in my professional life, yeah. Yes, well, we are, and so, yes, and so, but I think that that's part of the goal, right, is to continue to increase those behavioral health services for children, because again, at the root of this is if they're not feeling emotionally well, they're not gonna perform educationally well. So I think that whatever our legislators can do to support those, continue to support that, because yes, we passed 5001, and there is a committee in place, but the need is still there for services and access to those services.
So would I be digressing if I asked you to just quickly explain what you said you're going to do some kind of a program right here in town?
So, yes, so actually, I think last month we got to hear about a pilot program here that will be here at the high school, and it will be those co-located behavioral health services, which is actually it's considered to be one of the best ways for children and families to get access. Again, I continue to say access because that's probably the most difficult experience that our families have when needing those behavioral health services, or even finding out where they are, how to get to them, and so forth.
Eric, I just would be remiss if I said, one, I mean, I 100% agree with you. I work at the Village, which that's my day job, and we run one of the 4 UCCs in the state. There's one in New Haven, one in Waterbury, one in New London, and one, as you mentioned, in Hartford, and that's the Urgent Crisis Center. Walk-in, no appointment necessary, and it's for children, no insurance, and and obviously there's a wall up between. I don't advocate for the or lobby for that at the legislature, the executive branch. I know that the ask is $9 million to keep those going. It was originally funded with mostly ARPA funds, and the idea is to slowly kind of ramp down state grant and get a mix of provider funding, where some of that would come from insurance rates as well. And that's what other states have done. They kind of have a blended approach to that, but super, super important to your point as far as access.
Yeah, the access, and again, the more we can get. I know Farmington has already released some information out to the families in our district about how to access those and where they are. But they're so critical because, again, if our children are not feeling emotional well, they're not going to perform well.
Right.
And then the only other thing I would say, and then I'll stop there, is you mentioned the special education, and I know that is the new committee. But even today we're going to talk about this as well. But when you look, even in Farmington, our stats for special education is rising. And I believe this the last time when we were going through our budget last year, towards the end after we had our vote, one of my comments was it was still not enough.
Totally.
It's just not enough, and we, our young people are being identified at an earlier age for special educational needs, and so that is a space where, again, continue to support our districts for being able to have the appropriate resources in the schools, the staff personnel with the specialty, to be able to, in special education is so diverse in its definition, right? Because our kids come with various special educational needs. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So we do need our personnel to have a diverse understanding as well about who our kids are and what they need in the educational space.
I would ask you, if you all don't mind, there's a task force that just came out with a report. You're familiar with it, yeah. And so it just came out just a couple weeks ago. I have a copy of it here with some really interesting recommendations. And so I would love to, as we continue on with the session, hear from you all. Are these the right recommendations for Farmington, do you think? I went in to talk with the Senate President a couple of months ago when we were looking at committee assignments and talked about special ed before I even knew this committee was being formed. And it's like, be careful what you wish, and I was very passionate about that we needed to help our towns, we need to help our students more. And he said, oh yeah, well, okay, serve on the committee. So I'm using this as kind of a good guide, these recommendations, which, as you know, I mean, it's not just funding, but it's controlling costs. It's the formula that is not fair, especially to a town like Farmington. I think West Hartford as well, where that's where I live. And then, we don't have enough trained people, right, doing it as well. So there's a shortage on the staff section as well.
I would ask if you could have that circulated to the, can you arrange to have that
I
circulated?
can do that, yeah.
Thanks. I haven't seen that, so I'd like to, I don't mean, I'm not gonna read it right now, but I mean,
Yeah, no,
I'd like to read it for sure, though.
it's laid out pretty well. There's been some good recommendations. And they have a great panel with people, superintendents and teachers and experts, so it's not.
I think it would be familiar to the board in that many of the things that we've done in Farmington are aligned to those recommendations, whether it's starting programming in district, which we did many, many years ago, or it's about the excess cost grant, which is, in Farmington, we used to, it's any costs that are over 4.5 times our per pupil expenditure, and we were typically receiving 70-75% reimbursement. We should receive 100%. All the towns in Connecticut, that is the promise, is that we would get 100%, and we would only get around 70-75%. And then recently, they reduced us to 59% reimbursement. And this is really not sustainable for Farmington or any school districts in Connecticut. So I think, from the perspective of the board and probably every board across the state, is to fully fund excess costs to 100%. And also not use different formulas for different towns. All students receiving special education should get the same reimbursement for the cost for programming for that child, not differentiating if you're a Farmington versus another town, because it really is this year especially is one of our largest drivers of the budget increase. So that's really important, and the idea of incentivizing in-district programming is another thing that other school districts haven't been able to achieve because there's upfront money costs to start it, and it's just very difficult. This board always supported that through the budget process with, within Farmington, we've been so lucky, so we have programming K-12 for social emotional needs, and we also have our specialized learning centers. We also have an 18 to 22-year-old program that we own. We co-own with Simsbury, the diagnostic center that's really owned by all the Farmington Valley districts. So these are all examples of the board supporting those programs, and they've benefited so many children over the years. And many of those recommendations, I would say that would be familiar to the board.
Yeah. I think if I could, your point about not having different formulas for different towns, I absolutely agree with, in part because there already is, in a way, a weighted formula, which, as you know, which is a cost per pupil in the 4.5 times as much. So you have a town like Farmington that does the right thing. What's your per pupil cost?
19?
Like 19.
19, okay. And I'm going to pick on this town because what's Danbury's? Denver's the lowest in the state. I believe it's 14.
It is the lowest with, with Meriden, 13, 12, something
Right.
like that.
So Farmington spends more and has to wait far longer to get reimbursed.
So it's already set up.
Right, and you're already doing the right thing. Where there's a town like Danbury, right, that is not investing as much in education, and they get reimbursed faster. That's completely not fair. So, I agree.
So if I don't want to skip, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just, again, lots of mandates and lack of funding. We look at the budget and we realize how many mandates came down and where do you get the money for this? It is difficult, especially we just built the high school. We want to keep the budget low. We want to keep the taxes low, but we don't want to take away from our children here. One of the things that I just need a little more clarity on, the part-time sick leave. I did a lot of reading and research on it, 25 employees or more. I'm not saying not everybody deserves a paid time off, I'm not saying that, but for part-timers. Can you explain a little bit that, or I think it's been in the work for about a year now, for paying employees, part-timers, sick pay, mandated, 25 employees or more, or like substitutes or anything like that. Now, we have our teachers we pay, and then, from what I'm hearing, we get substitutes, and now we have to have a substitute for the teacher that's sick, but now we might have to have a substitute for the substitute. Like, I just want to know maybe what your thoughts are, or what your plans are for the future, how to cover those funds for public school or for businesses or anything.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Do you want to start?
I want you to jump in because I didn't realize you're required to, part-time, you're required to pay part-time?
State of Connecticut, and also even for schools, that's happening.
And it's above and beyond the leave that's already contractually agreed to? It's above and beyond that?
Correct.
Okay.
So now, again, the funding, as I'm saying.
This year would be concurrent, the next budget, next fiscal year, but this year we're stuck with having to cover expenses, paid.
You mean if people are out?
Right, if people are out.
Right.
But I
I mean,
think
it's
there's
better
also-
than if they're in and they're sick, right?
Well, sure.
I mean,
sure.
that's kind of the basis, the idea behind paid sick. I mean, if there's any place where we would want people who are sick not to come to work, it would be a school to infect a bunch of children. So I stand by the legislation. I think it makes sense. I'm not saying there can't be tweaks, of course, but we've learned in the pandemic how important it is for people who are sick not to come to work. And if you don't come to work, and if you're part-time, and I don't know what all the benefits are, and then you have to decide, hey, I can't afford groceries or I can't pay rent, you're gonna come to work. And that's what we don't want for our kids. So I think for public health, it's a very smart bill. And we don't put it on employers to pay for it, because people pay for it themselves. So we did not require a mandate on businesses to pay for it.
I need a little more clarity on that, but how about, again, funding for schools, like that costs more money. I'm just saying, we're not saying we don't believe in those, we
Right.
agree with you,
Right.
but where do you get the money from?
Yeah,
It costs
I'm happy to
money do that.
look at, if you say, that here's the fiscal impact on, because of that law, on Farmington Public Schools, because you have to pay a substitute or whatever, we should look at it. Now, conversely, if somebody comes to school and they're sick, and they're getting a lot of staff and other teachers and students sick, there's probably a larger fiscal impact on that. So, I mean, you could argue that it saves the town money. I don't know, I'd be happy to look at
But
it.
just to be clear, the paid sick leave, as Derek pointed out, it's funded by a small contribution from each employee's salary. So you're not paying for that, but you are paying for the substitutes. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Right? Okay.
It does go, it reaches beyond sick time, or sick, that's not the only reason. You can
Yeah.
take time off. So in Farmington, we have contracts with our different associations, and I'll give an example of our teacher's contract is 15 sick days, and they can carry those sick days over to a certain level, and then it stops. But, and I'm saying, we have a wonderful faculty, staff, and administration who comes to work and it works hard. This particular paid sick leave act seemed to supersede our contract. So we say for sick time, you should be sick. This opens up to many other variations of reasons why you can be out, and kind of supersedes our already contracted, the agreements that we have. It does have the potential, as Sylvia was saying, to have an impact on student learning. I think the students and parents here and all of us would agree, a substitute coming in, it's very challenging for them to pick up from what happened the day before and give that same level of instruction for our students. So we have done some early calculations, and so we're thinking it's definitely over $100,000 that this will cost the Farmington schools. And but I think even more so, I'm concerned just about the educational impact of opening that up and potentially having more days for our faculty and staff to be out because it's not just our faculty, even paraprofessionals. If they're one-on-one, we do find substitutes for them as well. So it does, I think you're gonna hear from school districts across
It's not that
the
you're alleging
state.
there's abuse of the system, is that right?
No, I don't, I'm saying this act opened up the reasons for sick leave, not just sick. There's a lot of different reasons why you could take days off. That is not in our contract for sick days. That would be something we would negotiate with our association. So 5 of them, 5, right, Dan, would be opened up for many different reasons. So it's just something that we definitely wanted to bring to your attention because we also had to implement it in the middle of the year. It was a heavy lift for us. So it was very challenging to do a mid-year shift for our human resources department. But I think we are in agreement with you. Individuals who are sick, we want them to stay home, we want them to be well. It's not that at all. It's just, it has the potential for more absences just because it's not just for sick leave, it's for other reasons. So.
We got a long night, I want to make sure we have a chance to ask questions. Angela?
Mine was more on unfunded mandates, a little bit about what you touched there, but just other unfunded mandates that kind of come across from the state and, you know, the burden that that puts on, you know, the town itself to kind of come up with that. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done, or if these come through, can they come with funding to help the town cover some of these mandates that are coming? And I'm sure Kathy can speak to some of the specific ones, but
I was going to ask you about specific. Now, what are the worst of the unfunded mandates that we could bring back to our colleagues and say, hey, look, we need to take another look at this?
yeah, I mean, I know there were some last year. I don't know, Kathy, what would you say is the most egregious ones?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this, I was on a committee for professional development, actually 2 different iterations of the committee for mandated professional development for teachers. Our teachers are spending hours and hours with that mandated professional development. It's not aligned to our strategic improvement, so it is very challenging for them to go through so many different sessions of different things that have been mandated at the state level for our faculty, staff, bus drivers, faculty, cafeteria. Everyone has to go through those trainings. It can be very challenging and not really moving the things that are so important to us, which is ensuring social emotional well-being and academic achievement and a joy in school. You know, all of those things are so important to us, and that reflects a lot of the professional development we do internally. So that's one example.
Yeah. Senator Slapp, just a quick question. I know you said that the special education committee that you're on is new.
Yep.
Can you just tell the group what the charge of the special education committee is, and maybe just like a couple of priorities that you're looking at? We're about to look at the preliminary special education budget for our town a little bit later this evening, so I think it would dovetail pretty well to let us know what's going on in Hartford as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think that there's a recognition, certainly that's what I believe, but I mean many others, is because of, you know, the leaders, the legislators created this committee, that money alone will not solve this problem. I mean, we appropriated $40 million additional dollars, the state did, for special education in the last biennium, and it got swallowed up. And as Kathy mentioned, and the tiers went down because there's more money coming in, but the needs are rising so much faster. And there's more and more students in every district that are being who have special needs, right? And then there's not a control really on costs, because as you know, we have a legal requirement, the towns do, right, in order to educate children as we should, and to meet their needs, right? And so out of district placements get very, very expensive. So costs are one of the things that the committee is going to be looking at. How do we control costs while at the same time meeting our legal obligations to educate these children? So that's a big one. The formula I mentioned before, making it more equitable. And these are issues that I think would get would not be get enough attention if it just went through another committee, like the Appropriations Committee or the Education Committee, which is why we formed this new committee. Now, the bill is called a select committee, not to get too much in the weeds, but in other words, what we pass will go to the education committee. It's definitely gonna have a big fiscal note, which means, right, it's gonna cost money, so it'll go to appropriations too. But we have a very late deadline, which means that we can be working on these issues right up until close to the end of session. So cost, formula, funding, workforce, I would say those are probably the big four that this committee is going to be looking at. Yeah.
I would just add the importance, Farmington is looked at as like one of the top schools for special ed. So a lot of times we get students that come into the school where we have to outplace on the cost.
Right.
So I fully support Kathy's ask or need that we need to meet and bring it up from 59%. It's just not right. So I think it's really important that we continue to be the top schools in special ed, and they have the biggest budget. So for what you're doing now, would we realize any of the funding this year going into next year?
Well, that's my goal. I mean, that's sure. And the good news is that Farmington's not alone. You know, it's not like it's just Farmington banging on the door and you guys are, you know, it's every town, which is why this committee has been formed. It's dealing with it. You know, where I live, West Hartford, there was an anecdote that was shared with me after our first committee meeting, and an advocate for special education came up to me, and he said he was talking to a superintendent in his school district out in eastern Connecticut, and they said to a family that was coming in with 3 kids with special needs, he said, you know, we'd all be better off if we just bought you a house in West Hartford. So, you know, because of one, that, you know, it has a reputation like Farmington of being a great place, right? And it's like, you know, think about, right, the cost that they're saving. So it's every town, and which I think is, in a way, is a good thing, because it means, you know, we're not out there on an island by ourselves. And I'm gonna, you know, fight like the Dickens, as they say, in order to help Farmington.
Well, we look forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Same issue. We've been talking about it for quite a while, and the formula kind of ebbs and flows with how it affects Farmington. And I just think when we look at population for special needs in a certain district, and giving that a decent amount of weight, and I'm just glad to hear it's a priority and that there's a specific.
So I will ask a question that I should know the answer to, but I would like to hear it from the experts. This formula, is it based on demographics? Is it based on median income, or is it some combination of a lot of things?
I think it's just like the ECS. There's tiers to it. It wasn't like that a few years ago. We all received pretty much the same reimbursement level. So,
Okay.
you know, again, we would budget, in our budget, we budget for all costs, and then we take out the amount we expect for excess cost, and that's why so many districts are shocked right now that their reimbursement went down, because they didn't plan for the reimbursement to go down.
Right.
But then a couple of years ago, a tiered system was put in place, and we dropped, the reimbursement dropped for Farmington quite a bit, but this year is the lowest we've ever received at 59%.
Yeah, it's based on kind of a grand list, so like wealth of the towns.
Yeah, just like
Yeah. So, yeah, it's in this report that I'll.
But there's no correlation to free and reduced lunches, there's no correlation to, you know, racial demographics, no correlation to any of that. It's just based on a property, ability to pay.
I mean, all that.
More precisely, the perceived ability to pay.
Yeah, all that is baked in, of course, to the ECS formula, which, so it's in another formula, but anyway.
Right, no, but that's a different ECS, right?
Yeah.
There's like.
But there's a similar,
Yeah.
you know, we get less than others, you know, it's a similar, I guess, approach.
So
Is tiering.
I'll have my opportunity to speak.
But I'll start trouble. Is tiering of the towns such a bad idea?
Well, I think because of what Derek had said, it's already
Yes,
set up.
the answer to the question is yes.
But
From Farmington, from the perspective of the Farmington Board of Education, yes.
Demographically and financially, Farmington is in a different position than many other towns, so it should be looked at differently, should it not?
Fair, but then we're also the town that draws people coming, as you say, that story, the anecdote you shared. That happens every day here. That happens every day here, and we're also outplacing.
People come here for
services,
Yeah.
for education and service, and as you said, the law requires it, and we're gonna do it. And we're gonna turn to our neighbors in May and say, we're gonna ask you to pay X towards education. That number is fluxed and is fluid throughout the year, mind you. So we're gonna peg an estimated special education expense, right, based on what we think it's gonna be. We could have 2 families move into town in September who have significant needs that are outplaced. That could cost $1 million, which we had no ability or occasion to plan for.
Okay.
So that's what's driving the frustration that you're hearing tonight from our board, is that when we know that our biggest value drivers this year, the biggest value drivers is special ed. And let's be clear, I know you've worked very hard on this issue, and you're an advocate for us. And this is not, I don't want you to take this as giving you a hard time. Just expressing a frustration at the legislature at large, and what I perceive to be, and I'm speaking just for myself now, a significant tone deafness to the way that this is being done. The way special education is funded in the state of Connecticut is fundamentally flawed.
Right.
It should be a state burden, right? And it should be taken off. Well, I'd rather pay an extra 0.2 of a point in my state income tax than pay an extra 1.5 in my property tax. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get it, yeah.
So that's how I look at it.
I agree with you in terms of, the state piece of it, and this is part of it. I don't know how broad we want to go, but part of the large budget debate that we're going to have, because there's no pediatricians in the city of Hartford because Medicaid rates are so low. Medicaid rates have got to increase.
Sure.
Higher education, that's a whole other thing. Not even the scholarship. I'm not talking about adding, but the ARPA money's gone. The schools, and then this, and it's like, and that all comes down to: do we tweak the guardrails? Do we not? All that.
Right.
And if we don't, your property taxes will go up.
For sure.
And that's what everyone wants to say, don't tweak them, but don't raise my property tax. Like, the money's gotta come from somewhere.
I got it.
So I agree.
But just hear what I'm saying. I don't mean to cut you guys off.
And I just think the article, and the article I read today had to do with, and it came out of the task force, so I know it's being discussed, is waiting for the percentage or the number of students receiving special education services in a town versus ability to pay, or at least to look at all of that.
So take into
there are
consideration the number of kids.
factors that are not considered now that hurt our town and our district.
That's
our ability to pay.
a fair
And like Farmington's ability to pay is already baked into the 4.5%
That's right.
that they have to get to before they get any money from the state.
4.5 times.
Because they're at $20,000 per pupil, whereas other towns are less.
That's the
So I think it's
That's the
already.
Danbury
So
experience.
that's already baked into it. And I just think in this particular population, who honestly, makes our district a better place, because we have such incredibly talented students with different exceptionalities, and that makes us a very strong and wonderful place. But I do feel that all students with special needs should have full reimbursement for their costs. It doesn't matter what town you live in, it should just be that way in Connecticut. We're a state that prides ourselves in education. So I think that kind of is just what should happen. And I know it's tough because of the amount of funding it will require, but I think everyone is saying it's so important to all of us.
So
and
I
to our families.
appreciate all this. So my final question, I guess, is there a way to get to where you want to get to without having the state pick up the entire tab? In other words, is there a way to tweak the formula that everybody doesn't like? Nobody likes the formula. Is there a way to tweak that formula short of having the state pick up the whole
Well, we just heard
thing?
Kathy say, there's an immediate solution, that fund is at 100%.
Because
Okay.
we're already paying 4.5 times our per pupil.
Yeah.
So we're already paying that amount. It was just a promise made by the state that it would be fully funded, anything beyond that, to ensure students get what they need, in the area of special education.
That's a start.
And the task force
That's a
says, no tiers and started at 3.5 times, not 4.5 times.
Yes, that would be
That's
a
fair.
big
That's
improvement,
fair.
yes.
Andrea, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. My question's a little bit different, although I agree with everybody what they asked. So infrastructure and air conditioning, school construction. At our last board meeting, we went over the capital improvement budget, and one of the infrastructure needs that we've identified, and it's on the horizon now, is air conditioning in the elementary schools. All 4 elementary schools, it has a price tag roughly of $16 million.
And behind you, you have elementary students from Noah Ross and their families and teachers and the principal
We're waiting very
who are
patiently.
waiting patiently for air conditioning. And, you know, I know there were some grants, and those have expired and they're not available. And at our last meeting, there was some talk about there's possibly in the legislature including air conditioning in the in school construction.
That's my understanding, is that there's a proposal that's being floated
Well, we
to do
support
just,
that.
do just that.
Strongly support that. We
Yeah.
strongly support
Yeah,
that.
which would make it easier for you to apply for and hopefully acquire the grants.
Well, allows us to go to referendum,
Puts
a
it in
clear
the regular
message to the town,
agenda.
what we're gonna be getting from the state, like we did with high school.
Yeah. So, did you hear the same thing? I mean, that's.
Yeah,
That's.
yeah. It's, I mean, we gotta do something. And
Yeah.
there's a system in place for that, so.
Yeah, but it has previously not been included in school
Right.
construction, and I know since COVID especially, there's, big push for air quality improvement.
Yeah, I think you're gonna see a change there, but again, don't hold me to it, don't hold us to it, but that's the talk is that they're gonna include that in, it's gonna be a part of school construction.
Yeah, we're
going forward.
hoping for it.
Yeah.
We're supportive of it.
All right, most of the stuff's been covered by my colleagues, I'm not gonna pepper you with any other questions. I think you've been really helpful in helping us understand where you guys are at in terms of your challenges and your priorities. There's no doubt that both of you are working very hard for us and for the town of Farmington. There's no doubt in my mind. I've known you both. I've known you both for a long time. I know what you do for us over there. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome.
Chairs.
We're just wrapping
No,
up.
you just-
It was nice to
Tell
see you.
people what happened.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got rear-ended on the way here.
Oh.
And I was stuck waiting for the police and officers, I apologize. So I figured I would come in late, thank you.
You okay?
Can I just say something?
Sure.
I'm going to interrupt you, Bill, and I appreciate all the kind words you're saying and are about to say. So Rebecca is a former Board of Ed chair in Plainville, so you need to talk to her. You definitely need to talk to her.
All right, well, I can talk to her offline.
There you go.
I'll be happy to, because we have some mutual acquaintances in Plainville as well. I have some friends on the town council, so I'll be happy to talk to you. But anyway, so I just want to say thank you all. I think what the message you're hearing tonight from us is one of frustration that the state legislature continues to place the burden of educating children who have been identified as needing special needs on local taxpayers. And the challenge that presents local communities isn't that we don't want to do it. We don't want to take care of these children and make sure these children get what they deserve, what they need. The challenge is how do we pay for it when it's such a fluid number? It's a constantly moving number. Children move in and out of districts. And it makes it extremely difficult for us to ask the town to give us what we think is reasonable and necessary to educate all the children in Farmington, when we know that that number may not be accurate in 6 months.
Yeah.
And so what we're looking for, and that's compounded by the failure for the state to reimburse us at the appropriate rates, at the very least, to fulfill that commitment, right? So if we can at least start there, then we can have conversation. Let's see what that looks like before we start, banging down the door of the state should just offload all special education costs off of local communities and then just have the state assume that cost, right? Then you can figure out ways to finance that in other ways. But that being said, and the HVAC thing is absolutely critical for our community. We've got, as you know, Mike, Plainville's got some newer schools, thankfully. You did a good job getting schools built in Plainville. Our schools are
Not the roads, though. Sorry.
Oh
my
God. That's right. But so our buildings are old. We need new air conditioning, and so we really do need to have that resolved in a way that we can go back and go out to the community and ask them to help us support a real proper HVAC, project for all 4 of our elementary schools. So with that being said, thank you all. Thank you for joining us. I'm so sorry you couldn't, we do have children on our agenda tonight, and they've been waiting patiently. I'm so sorry. And I'm glad you're okay. I'm so glad you're okay, and you're very welcome to come back at some other time. We'd love to have you back.
It's pretty special to be here because our legislators did get us more reimbursement for this particular building.
Yes.
Whenever you can do
True.
that, please do that
I will be
for
remiss.
us.
I would be
It's
remiss.
much appreciated.
You guys did a phenomenal
Yes,
job
yes.
helping us get this building across the finish line. I'd be absolutely remiss in not
You've been
addressing
very
it.
kind to say that, but again, I'm glad we had this robust discussion. I understand a lot of these things better now. I understand where you're coming from better now. And we need to go to work on
Thank you.
you know, the high school is done, now we gotta move on to this other
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
So,
Thank you, guys.
cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, and
Oh, yeah.
I'll get another copy.
Oh, I have, these are from CAPS, just their legislative priorities from superintendent.
Okay.
So I thought I'd give those to you.
Awesome, thank you.
Everyone.
Always a pleasure. Okay, all right. Well, that was all busy work. Sorry, guys. You guys have been super patient, really patient. I wish we had ice cream or something we could offer you today. So you guys get up till 11 o'clock today. Fantastic. Moms and dads are good. Okay, moving on. We'll do the approval of minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the January 13th, 2025 Board of Education regular meeting?
Motion? Second?
Any discussion? Any edits or revisions? Comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Item 6 on our agenda, the consideration of the superintendent's report. Okay. Next item on the agenda, folks. Preliminary special services budget. Wendy, welcome. Congratulations on your first presentation.
Well, second, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Fair.
Which is looped back into this one. So good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. So this is the preliminary special services budget. I feel like there's been so much rich discussion already. You already have a really good understanding of all of the challenges that we face. So of course, with the special services department, just like all of the other departments in Farmington, our goal is to make sure that we are aligned and offer the promise to all children, the vision of the global citizen, and we do that by focusing on 3 priority areas within the department: culture and climate, academic achievement, and teaching and learning. Culture and climate, much to the rich discussion that was had tonight, we know if children are not feeling safe, if they're not feeling supported, they will be less likely to have success accessing their academics. So we are always focusing on making sure that the supports and the services that they need are available to them, that we're partnering with families and outside agencies to bring supports, and that is able to bring their better academic achievement, accessing their curriculum in the least restrictive environment whenever that's possible, to make sure that they're able to get the rich curriculum and opportunities that all children are promised, and that we're supporting their needs. And of course, for special services, the architecture for those plans, right, happens within the IEP development, and making those robust, very thoughtful plans to make sure that that is driving the learning and the enrichment. So our goals are focused around those priority areas. And I will say, and it goes much to, again, to the discussion that you have tonight, but if I were to say anything to the legislatures, it's a very small phrase that my grandmother used to share with me, and an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The very intuitive piece about special education services and where we are fortunate in Farmington is the understanding that if you provide students up front with all of the services that they need, and you're rich and robust with their programming, the costs will take care of themselves. That is a strategic way to worry about cost, but if you're centered on the child and what the child needs, and you're able to proactively offer services, that is the key to cost control. And so when we look at that, we look at all areas of the equity framework, and that goes into recruitment and hiring, making sure that we're finding quality teachers to bring quality programming for our students. Again, the areas of academic achievement, school culture, and then the community piece, which I had the opportunity to talk to you about before with some of our initiatives, but the primary initiative right now with the school clinic. So we'll go into those things. When I'm looking at, a district and how we're doing, I always like to look at the wide picture to get the story and do that comparison across the state. So this slide is a slide that they share with us frequently at our back to school meetings for directors across the Connecticut, and it shows kind of like the story about what's going on. So as everybody is experiencing the rise in special education populations, there's also several nuances to why that's happening. One of the not so talked about pieces is, one of the reasons for that is there's almost a skewed ratio, right? Because as our rise in special education students and the prevalence rate has gone up for special education, actually enrollment for all students across the state is going down. So you have a skewed ratio. And that variability is what you have seen across the state. So very variable ratio there at that last slide in the end. You can see there was a drastic dip down around the areas of COVID for both enrollment and special education. And then there's been a very steep incline coming up as everybody kind of levels out back to normal again. So then you take that, and when you compare that state story to Farmington's story, it's been a little different because our enrollment here in Farmington has been primarily stable for the regular ed enrollment. And then when you look at the special education across the state, you can see that over almost 2 decades there, right, we've gone from 11% from in the state to close to 18% in the state. That's the state average. But for Farmington, we've been pretty stable, like some variation in special education population going up. So when you see a ratio like that, that's also a testament to, this is a prevalence rate that holds steady like that is a testament to usually your intervention services, right? So the wider curriculum and how you support kids. And Farmington is rich in their intervention and services in terms of our intervention specialists, being able to be proactive before students are noted as having difficulties and possibly going into special education. So we've stayed pretty flat there. So then what are our challenges, right? Like everybody else in the state, there's some variability in the different demographics among special education and where the areas of need are. And you hit upon it in your discussion. It's not so much that our numbers are rising as much as it is the severity of need within the children who need special education services is changing. So you can see that in the levels of the autism going up. You see that in speech and language, which is indicative of your students that are diagnosed needing services from birth to 3 and then need it in preschool as they come in. Those rates are going up. And then also in your other health impaired, which is indicative of students who have either ADHD or your students that have medical disabilities and they need more supports and services there. So that's the challenge that districts have, and that where we're similar here. So where we have used our ounce of prevention, right, is within our comprehensive supports and services and in our programming. You can see that normally you have a pre-K to 12, right, when we talk about it, but when we talk about special education now, we're also planning as a town to actually have to support students through the age of 22 for some of our students with special needs that actually need programming through their 22nd birthday. So, and those laws, they've moved even recently, used to be 21, and then recently just changed 22, and that's challenging. But we do have, and Farmington has been very thoughtful and wise about making sure that we're building the comprehensive programming to make sure that you are proactive and able to offer the students the supports up front. So our challenge now is to continue to develop that programming and keep up with those needs. So key elements of special programming are, of course, you know, key points there are being able to keep those programs with lower student to teacher ratios so the teachers are able to manage those demands. That too also comes with an increased need in para support usually. And then related services is also a key area, particularly when you're talking about those children with from birth to 3 that need more speech and language services, and then the medical needs that will need more of the OT services, PT services, and those specialized services. And then always family and community involvement is an area to grow and improve. The behavioral health needs, so making sure that you have quality IEPs, quality staff to implement and write those IEPs, and then many of your special programs are going to need that higher level of therapeutic support within the behavioral health services and needs, so making sure we're always increasing and growing among those demands. Examples of how that can be cost effective for a district would be the STEP program. This is a historical slide that I have inherited, but I will tell you that you can see that second point there, 42% of the STEP students that have participated in the program are students that were brought back from out-of-district placements because we were able to support them here. We're in the process of doing that for a few more students this year, so having those programs is a way to avoid those out-of-district placements. Our other programs within the district, you can see for the SLC and the sales program, that's just a comprehensive slide that tells you over the years how many students we've supported. So we have 93 within those specialized programs this year, and then another 37 students that we're supporting within our SEL programs in our classrooms. So I will tell you with those two slides combined, that's about 25% of our students with special education needs that need those specialized programs, which is important that we have them. We talked about this a little bit already, right, with the comprehensive needs and services that our social workers, school psychologists, guidance counselors all provide. Our other layers of support that we want to make sure that we're maintaining and supporting would be our care team and our BCBAs that are the next level up for even more specialized care and support for our teams that need more professional development, consult services to be able to handle students that have very challenging needs. And then, of course, the most important thing is that we are also not stopping there, but we're reaching out, as we noted, right, to the larger community to get those clinical supports and services that students need and being able to provide them in a more proactive manner and get them within the school so they can have access. I will tell you one of the biggest important that the students have their mental health services available to them. Can't do anything else that's more important. But again, by being able to provide that support, we are also preventing out-of-district costs for students who have maybe been struggling for a period of time without having that level of support. Other actions that we have partnered with this year to make sure our students are supported is with our local Farmington Valley Health District, right? Our high school staff has reached out and paired with them to be able to help and support students and give them access to programming for any student that might be struggling with substance abuse. They also have an excellent SEL curriculum that is free at cost that our staff can access to provide right into the regular curriculum. And then, of course, another layer of work would be exploring our local opportunities to pair with our colleges to bring in interns that could help support and supplement our services. Preschool, I just spoke about a little bit, but having our collaborative preschool is a need, an ever-growing need in the district, where they can come in and learn alongside their non-disabled peers. So that is consistently growing. So you see a dip there again among the COVID years, but this has been, and this is where we kind of mirror the state even more, our rise in our students that come in from birth to 3 services is growing. This year, I can predict we're going to be back at that high point again, around 40. We have several students that are in referral right now. We took a close look at analyzing our nursing services this year. So last year, we made the implementation of adding a full-time head nurse position. Now that we're doing some redistricting in the district and we're re-examining the nursing needs, we have just made the assessment that the actual nursing needs is very critically important right now as we redistrict, and Westwoods is going to need some more support. And the need for the head nurse right now, those supervision and responsibilities, we can kind of offset some costs right there and make an adjustment. This was all your conversation that you are so on point with. Our concerns right now and some of our challenges are we do have an increased need in the number of, in either in the consultant line for bringing in further supports and services for our students who have more severe needs. Our outplacements are on the rise. So continuing to support our programming to prevent those things is going to be a critical step. And then, of course, the outplacement is directly connected to the rise in the special transportation costs, because as you outplace them, you have to transport them as well. So, with all of that, we have some services that we can propose that actually have, so it's readjustment of some things and moving of these lines, that will further support our proactive efforts to keep our quality comprehensive programming in place, but also bring in the additional supports and services that our students need. So overall, we are looking to increase a 1.0 occupational therapist. Right now, that's coming from a contracted service line. We are looking to pilot and try a Bloomfield employee, and that will stabilize continuity of programming across the district, allow for one provider to get familiar with several children and carry supports and services over a number of years. We're increasing, we have an increased need for another SLC teacher at West District. Again, making sure that we're staying up to speed with being proactive with our supports and services for our programs. Increasing a 0.5 special education teacher at Noah Wallace due to increased enrollment there. We had to move 5 paraprofessionals from off of the IDEA grant. As you all know, there's been some adjusting as some of the grants rolled away and moving of staff to be able to adjust for that. And then we did have some students that moved into district this year that caused an increased need to add another 2 paraprofessionals. We are looking at moving some of just the FTE funding from the care team to support preschool, as they do anyway now, but that'll be just from a different funding source, from our Excel revenue. So all in all, and then we talked about the head nurse. So all in all, this plan gives us the ability to keep our services and our programs intact and being proactive while impacting very minimally on the budget right now as we go through those other challenges.
Real quick question. So the numbers in red, additional FTE 1.5, certified 7.2 on non-certified. Do those numbers include the blue and the green numbers below?
No. So the blue and the green are actually already, you're going to get a reduction in a 0.2 from the care team because it's just moving off of the budget onto being picked up by the preschool.
Right.
And then the green is because they're already, the budget position is already in the budget, but we're just reallocating it to a different position.
Okay. The 1.5 minus 0.2, or is it 1.5 and then 0.2 somewhere else?
No, the point 2 is for the care team that's being moved.
Two different, okay,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. So when I see blue, it's going off the book.
Yeah, it's to line up with the line
And
items.
I know, and I appreciate you trying to do this to make it clear, so I'm not trying to give you a hard time.
Okay,
Okay, but that's, so the blue is being moved off operating to Excel.
correct.
Green is reallocation,
Yeah.
red is new job.
You got it.
Got it, okay.
Got it.
Wendy, do you want to just say one more green one that could be there is the IAR psychologist, social worker psychologist, because I'll review it a little bit, but it's probably better if you.
I saw
Right,
that, I saw
right,
it in your
right.
budget, you have a
Yeah,
special
yeah,
ed in your
so
budget.
it's not
had-
on here, but.
We had allocated this year a .5 social worker for IAR, which we had been unsuccessful in being able to fill. So after reevaluating that for next year, and then also thinking about the needs and how we can be a little bit more strategic for that, we've decided to reallocate that position instead of a school social worker to a school psychologist instead. Because the school psychologist can't take care of testing needs, but also take care of the counseling needs. So it's just a higher level of service for the same FTE
0.5.
adjustment, right?
But also cost neutral,
Right.
and probably not on here because it's not even moving from one bucket to another. They're both already in
It's simple.
staffing.
Are you having a hard time filling it because it's 0.5?
Yeah,
There's
probably.
that too. There's that too, but I think that the strategy of the psychologist was also that potentially psychologists also have another business sometimes on the side.
Sure.
And
They
might
do.
use this
They
to put
do.
something together. Yeah.
Right, I got it, okay. Any questions? If you don't have any questions tonight, that's okay, you're gonna have a chance to kind of digest everything. I just want to reiterate, this is just there's a chance to digest everything, reflect on what you've heard, and then come back with really good questions on Saturday. So, any questions on this side? You don't have any, don't worry about it.
No, well.
Or comments, I mean, again, you're gonna have an opportunity on Saturday too.
Yeah, I know. I have a lot of thoughts on this, just a lot. I took down, well, just big picture, I think, for everybody, I mean, you all sense and know, I feel very strongly about this particular area. This is not, and like I said last time when we closed out on our budget approval, this is not a space where I think we should be, minimizing what is needed. This is not a space where we need to compromise significantly. This is a space where our students, it's across the board, it is very much needed. So I just think our families need it, our staff need it, our community needs it, and so this is not a space where I think that we should be compromising. I'll definitely reserve a lot, but I have a couple questions that for Saturday is around that a little bit more that we can talk to about this, the 0.5 social worker at IR. I didn't necessarily, I supported it, but I didn't think that the 0.5 was going to be sufficient. I think, and I do have questions around whether it be a social worker or the school psychologist. I want to talk more about that. I understand where the cost savings can be, but even at a 0.5, is that really, especially at IR, do we need something more than just that? Whether you're switching from a social worker to a school psychologist. And then other questions too, in regards and just looking in the preparation for Saturday and looking at all the slides, the STEP program, sort of one of the things that we know through evidence-based practices is transitions in and transitions out. Students' success outplaced or coming back in is the transitions to both are critical to ensure success for them and to ensure success for the educational placement. So just hearing more about that transition in, transition out would be very critical. And then the last thing, and I'll save the rest for the other day, next day, but the other thing is, when we're talking about special education or services in this arena, you are right, it's complex needs. And our kids in this category, let's just say classification, this area of need, the complexities that they have, it's not just about how they're learning or how they're taking information and how they're then expressing it back out. But when you have a young person who also has medical disabilities or emotional dysregulation added to whatever the disability of may be of autism and all those other layers, those are complex needs. And it takes a very, as I mentioned earlier, staffing, skill sets that come with that diverse understanding of all those complex needs. And so it's again, this is why it's not a space where we need to compromise on the funding for it, because it's personnel that have had, are passionate in this work, in this arena, but also personnel who come with that unique skill sets that not everybody has to understand those complex needs of those kids.
To speak to one thing and to go back to the task report finding, and if I was able to challenge our state representatives on like one of the priorities that's most important to me as a special educator, it's struck me to the heart since COVID particularly. It was difficult before COVID, but we are in crisis in education, and particularly in special education, with our ability to be able to have the certified professionals in front of us to be able to support these children. They're not moving into the schools of education at the rates being able to keep up commensurate with the rise in the need, and the state needs to do more, federal on down, to be able to put incentives in place, to be able to reinstitute, incentives for staffing, to be able to keep those people in place, to be able to make sure our paraprofessionals are adequately trained and they are of quality level of education as well. It is critical. So I was very, very thankful to see that staffing piece in there, because that's critically important, equally to the cost control piece. So I agree with you.
Mary?
All set.
Angela?
I just had a question on you said an I was going to say IDEA grant, but I think you said the letters. How, I don't know about it honestly. How long have those positions been on that grant, and can you give me a little bit of background on that grant? Or I don't know if it's for you, I know you're new to the position, or if it's somebody else.
So it is more historical, but I will tell you that there is always, a level of staffing that is supported by the IDEA grant. And then supplement to that, there would be some training initiatives and other things, but it typically does support staffing.
So did that grant just go away?
So no,
Okay.
it's always there, but the amount of money that we had to be able to carry over and support that level of staffing changed, because there's been kind of like a roll down effect from the grants of special education staff being supported by other grants. So it's just been an ebb and flow and kind of balancing of those positions, as not just, so IDA is stable and will always be in place, but as our ARPA grants go away and there's been some shifts and changes there's been kind of like a ripple effect for that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
This is such a quick. I just asked Kathy, I'm gonna have her bring a glossary of all the
Really?
acronyms, all the different things we saw tonight, just so that
That'd be
we can
helpful.
have it in front of us. I think it's a good idea that we know what. So when you say like BCR, BCB, what does that mean? I mean,
Alphabet soup.
exactly.
But yeah.
SCAD, I didn't know what, that's the only one I didn't know, SCAD.
That's the only one I didn't know. So you got 100 on the
Yeah,
exam.
it's one of our specialized programs.
James, any questions?
He's showing me his glossary.
I have my acronym glossary that I started when I
Kathy can
started
call him
this.
for.
Nadine?
I'll share that with the class.
Kathy?
So many.
Just to piggyback on the IDEA grant, that's a federal grant, like Title I.
And they're all in our financials. If you look in the back of our financials, you'll see the various state and federal grants we received.
You got anything, Larry?
No, that is a question I have. What does SEAD stand for?
Oh, so social,
Sade.
emotional, academic development, right? So it's all the programs have an acronym.
Yeah.
I'm still learning them too.
No, I don't feel like I
Next year we will.
But the seed program is
There's quite a few in this package I haven't
It's-
seen before.
yeah.
It's the SEL program, K-12, it's just that the elementary wanted to have a nice
Oh, okay.
name
Yeah.
to go with
I got
it.
it.
So they created a name, but it's a K-12 program that is in each one of our schools. Not each, I should say, just Noah Wallace, K-4, and then Westwood's IAR at the high school. And the high school version of it is STEP. But we We can provide all of those.
We can.
Sounds like a bunch of good questions for the trivia. The only thing I want to add is the IDA is a federal funding from the Department of Education. I had asked back in December, what is our federal number? You know, Dan did a great job putting it all together for us. Again, information that's pretty much readily available to us in every financial report, but it's important to, you made the comment, it's always going to be there. We've been led to believe that may not be the case. So let's just keep that in the back of our mind as we go about our work. That was fantastic, Wendy.
The columns are, so the blue column shows you about the continuum of services for all children. As you go down the grid, it just gives the specialized programs. So the columns in the greens are acronyms for our students within our Specialized Learning Center. The SEL programs, so those are our students with autism, multi-handicap needs. The pink column is our social and emotional learning programs. So SEED is within that column. And then our other programming, Kathy kind of alluded to earlier, but our programming even through the age of 22 with Farmington Valley Transition Academy, using the alternative high school and other supports for the comprehensive programming that goes through even the age of 22, of course, with our Transition Academy. So.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
See you Saturday. All right, 6C, preliminary professional staffing budget. Veronica, come on down.
So this also is sort of in that same spirit of preliminary report, and so things that you will again see on Saturday, but this gives you a little preview here. So this annual report gives you that early look, and I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of an idea of the process that we go to bring you this. Oh, it's going too slow. I was going to.
Oh, just okay. No, that's fine. I was going to say it's just a down button for you. Each year, early in the process, so back in November or so, we meet already with principals to start developing this budget and the staffing budget that you'll see today. And we look at projected enrollments, school programming priorities, and other factors that we need in order to effectively staff for the various schools. At elementary, that usually looks like looking at our enrollment numbers. So I just want to remind the board that for next year, the enrollment numbers that we're looking at are the ones that are coming from the Gallagher report. You know, we usually use different numbers, but this year, as you know, due to the shifting enrollment from East Farms to Noah Wallace, we are using the Gallagher report numbers in this report. At this level, we're really looking at class size and keep it within the board policy ratio policy, and so that report is at the end of this report, so that you can be reminded what that policy is. At the secondary level, we look at enrollment trends by class and sort of historically what that looks like and what student interest may be, and this is generally guided by the class size report that you saw that Kim presented back in October. So those are the ways that we start learning about what our needs might be for the following year, and we always follow the class size policy that's, like I said, attached to the report. Then in December, we have more formal budget meetings with each school, and the principals give us final, proposals for what they would need for the following year. And just so that you know, not all of these requests are included in the superintendent's recommended budget. We've already had some discussion with them about, that not everything not everything is possible in the things that they've recommended that we do for next year. So in any case, what you're seeing tonight is what has made it past that part of the process, and what we are recommending should go forward. And so really at the beginning of the report, I sort of provided you with a little bit of, Kathy always puts out a letter about what is driving the budget this year. And so I would say that there are really, out of the 4 things that are driving the budget, there are really 2 that impact staffing. So the first one, you can see there, Dan already moved the slide to that, thank you. So that's academic excellence and equitable opportunity. So here, We're recommending more ELL teacher support. As you know, this has been a growing program over time in our district. Somewhere around 250 students are serviced by several, really two teachers at the K through 8 level and then tutors. And so we're finding we need some more support in that area. The other big driver here is a grade 6 teacher. So we currently, the next year will be one of the biggest years that we've ever had at Westwoods. So the 5th grade class that is moving to 6th grade is large, and so we need to maintain the numbers there. And then the 4th grade that's going into the 5th grade is a very large class as well. So we're looking just for class size. We are looking to add a 1.0 teacher at the 6th grade level. You can imagine that will also have an impact on different specials areas as well. We think that we'll be able to, in almost all areas, cover it with what we have, but in world languages, we are asking for a 0.2 in order to be able to provide the same level of world language programming for all the students there. So a 0.2 would help with that. There is an offset a little bit with art because we're able to enhance the preschool programming now that preschool will be, well, a lot of preschool, not all of it of course, but a lot of preschool will be at Westwoods. So in order to enhance that program, we can offer some art, and Excel funds will be applied to that, and we've talked to Brian about that. So that sort of is an offset in the budget there. So overall, for this area of academic excellence and equitable opportunity, you could see there's a total of 1.6 FTE. And I will just, I should say FTE for those, to add to the glossary, FTE are, and I have it here, it's a full-time equivalent. And so, like, for example, generally a teacher at the high school level, for example, who teaches 5 sections plus has duties, sort of like that would be considered a full load. So somebody who's like a 0.6 teacher might have 3 classes plus duties and all of that. So an FTE is a full-time equivalent because sometimes teachers aren't a 1.0. So when you see it there, that's what that part of it means. And so, right, so that's what we're asking for in there. You will not see here the fact that some teachers need to move from school to school. This is just in terms of additional asks. We really believe that given the staffing that we have, and even though there'll be some enrollment shifts, we'll be able to cover that with the staffing that we have, besides the examples here. And so moving on, the other driver, I said it was related to 2 of the big drivers that Kathy talks about as drivers of this budget. The second one is special services. So we've had a lot of a preview of that, so I will not belabor the point here. But Wendy already had said this. So the 1.0 West District SLC teacher. So again, SLC are our specialized learning classrooms, which will see an increase, and we know that already because we already know who's coming in from our preschool. So we already have some real numbers in terms of knowing that that's going to be a necessity that's not a guess. Those are real students that we have right now that we know about. Also, of course, with the number of students that are moving from East Farms to Noah Wallace, there's an additional need for special education there at a 0.5 level. And there's an offset of a 0.2 for special education now that the students are no longer at the preschool, no longer at Noah Wallace, but they need some services that will be provided by a mental health professional, either a psychologist or a social worker. Now that they're going to Westwoods, that'll be offset by somebody from the townwide mental health response team at a 0.2, helping with that program there, which will again come off of our budget and be given to as an Excel cost there. So that's where that 0.2 is coming from. So really, in terms of the entire budget, in terms of certified staff, of what Wendy was asking for is a 1.3 FTE. You can see the total there. And so then overall, the 1.6 plus the 1.3 here is a 2.9 FTE total. The other thing that I wanted to say about this is often at this table, at this time, we have a long discussion about a non-deployed teacher. So I just want to say that last year, due to class size and what we anticipated might happen, we had 2.0 added to the budget. We only deployed one of those to address the class size. So one more remains, which we're still asking for next year to address any fluctuations in the numbers that we have there. But we don't need to add it to the budget. You're not seeing it there because it's already in the budget. It's already accounted for 1.0 in our budget, so there's no need now to add that to our staffing. And the other thing I would say is that, so that's really the request. I just want to say in the booklet you have also an overview of the staffing levels, so you may see the shifts. So all the shifts I was talking about, you'd be able to sort of follow in there. And also that might be shifts between schools and also between schools and districts. So for example, our tech integration teachers, you'll see net minus 1 FTE in schools, but they're being added to a district-wide budget line just given the changing nature of their roles. They're not tied so much to a building, but tied more to specialties that are district-wide. And then, as I mentioned before, some of the shifting is from one name of a position to another. For example, the psychologist, social worker, as we discussed before. So that's what you have in the booklet. Really a very detailed staffing report. I want to thank Ann Jay. She really does a lot of the work on helping put that report together and making sure that everything lines up to all the different pages that you see. So anyway, I want to just thank her for her work on that and working so closely with me to pull this together. So that's the ask this year, 2.9 FTE in these critical areas.
Thank you. Any questions over here? Down there, Angela?
I just had a quick question. I was looking at this page right here, so I'm showing you. This page 47, which is just, it kind of gives for each school, just like the leadership for improved teaching and learning. What is the role for the elementary schools, the family school liaison? So there's 4 of them. Is that, so I know we have Kristen Wilder, who's the family coordinator. Is there another, is that like one person that does all 4, or where is she in here, and then what are those 4?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So these, just know, sometimes they're entire positions and sometimes they're a stipend. So in that case, those are stipends, and that's just so that at every school, there can be somebody who's the point person at that school for our choice program. So imagine there's like an event after school and somebody needs to be there to make sure that students get their rides, or there's a transportation issue. There's somebody then dedicated at each school that gets an extra stipend. It's not a whole position.
So that's like a teacher that has that as an additional responsibility.
Correct.
So Kristen's role is not in this group.
It's not that, but she does do a lot of work with that group. So I would say that she sort of oversees that group in some ways. There are regular meetings. I just went to one last week. So there's regular meetings with that group, like how's it going? How else can we support our students?
Got
that
it.
kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Veronica. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday morning as well. All right, next item on our agenda is item 6D, 2023-2024 Profile and Performance Report.
Yeah, so it's me again. So this is a report that we bring to the board every year, and really the idea of this report is just that this is all publicly available data that just became public to us last week in terms of the PPR, but it's made up of several parts, and I'll start by saying one of the parts is this accountability index. So I'll just talk a little bit about this. Many years ago now, the state put together a way to give school districts and schools a little bit of a report card, and gave us a little bit of a, they gave us a way to calculate how we're doing on various areas. And so generally you can see that in the report, what the 3 buckets are, so I rewrote them here. And then we do very well on this. So I just want to highlight that this is, so my coloring scheme here was green is like nearly perfect, like 100% pretty much in all those areas, and we scored all the points. And then the scheme was supposed to be yellow and then red. I'm just going to say we have nothing in red. Things are in yellow because those are places where, we could improve. But given the fact that really in the state, there's really 201 sort of districts that are represented sort of at the district level for this report, we're ranked 16th on that list, which puts us in the top 7% of all districts in the state of Connecticut. So really, there's always room for improvement. You know how we think, but we're doing very well, and particularly well, obviously, in those green areas. So anyway, so I just wanted to put that out there so that that people are working incredibly hard to maintain that kind of performance here in the district. So if you go to the next slide. So that's one part of a larger report, and your agenda packet was very large this time. Not only are there policies in there, but there's also all of the reports. So these are called the Profile and Performance Reports, PPR. They just came out last week. And so I'm not actually going to go over a lot of the data in it because I feel like all of the data, this is where we pull from. Every time, like when Wendy was saying, where we rank and all those kinds of things, this is how we know. It's because the state of Connecticut collects all this information and puts it in these very standardized formats and reports so that the public can see what's going on and can make some comparisons.
Well, we also collect this data ourselves too, right?
Well, we give it to them.
Right.
So we collect it, it's in a report, it's in a particular format, and then we send it to the state, and they use our data to create all these reports. And every school district is supposed to be doing that in a uniform kind of way.
And you give us that data like in the fall generally, right?
Oh, yes, we've already sent this a while ago. And so what will happen, what will happen is you'll have, and these are always running a year behind when it comes to like enrollment numbers, and actually 2 years behind when it comes to fiscal numbers and graduation rates, because those wouldn't be out for the next year yet. So you have to always look like, is that for last year or the year before? But they always do it the same way. So it's always like consistent that way. It's also a requirement that we have these reports on our website, but they're on our website already, and they're always on the Ed site, which is the state of Connecticut's site. And they're really meant for public reports that can be used to compare data across districts, but also over time. You can compare yourself to where you were several years ago in a very consistent kind of way. And of course, the accountability index that I just showed you is one part of it. You can see that, that's like sort of the fourth part. So very briefly, I'm just gonna say, this is where we find demographic data, so when we talk about our growing diversity, or we talk about the rise of free and reduced lunch, or those kinds of things, obviously it's our data, but then it's also publicly available in a report like this. Or students with disabilities, all of the data that Wendy was talking about, chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, all of that. So that would be sort of in the student data bucket. In educator, it would be how many FTEs we have, which I was just discussing, classroom teacher attendance. So again, those are the kinds of things in there. Instruction and resources, so that's where you would find, remember the discussion that we had about how much per pupil we spend, so that's there. So I went, because you said, Farmington, so ours from the last year was 20,158, but Bridgeport was 18,565, and Meriden is the 16,794, so pretty close, so that's how you would find that out. That's how legislators or public or anybody who wants to know would find it in there, and also like sort of the state average. So whenever you see those numbers, and when we compare, and this is how we know, because these things are public, or even the discussion about students with disabilities, what the primary disability is, all of that. And then, like I said, the performance and accountability is what I just said. Plus, and I think this is really a good, little indicator, college persistence into sophomore year is something that's in there. 5 years ago, it was we had 92.5% of our students persisted in college, and then the last year that they looked at, it was 94.5, which is really nice. So anyway, so that's what it is, and so every year I like to just, it is a requirement actually to bring this to the board, that you see those numbers, that they're included on our website. So every year I bring those, these reports to you so that you can have a look at them and the public can have a look at them as well.
This is stuff that realtors use, this is stuff that businesses use to help determine whether they want to move to Farmington, things like that. It's a really good resource for our public to understand some, how we're being measured, statewide. Any questions? Thank you, Veronica. Next up, 6E, professional appointments.
There are no appointments, resignations, or retirements for this report.
And next one is F, deeper learning updates.
So there were many exciting deeper learning updates in this report, like project-based learning examples, field trip to the Bristol Water Department, water treatment plant, performance at the Wolfpack game with our choir in one of our schools, and then several music updates.
I will say, in reviewing this, there was something that I already talked about cricket, and I firmly believe the town of Farmington needs to think very seriously about putting together a cricket pitch at some point for our residents.
They do actually have it at Westminster.
But it's not. But it's on the football field, right?
Yes,
Right.
but they approved for it to be used finally.
They
Like,
can't-
I
they
think
did get
8
approved?
years
Oh,
ago,
they did?
officially,
Okay, good.
officially.
I wasn't aware of that. That's good.
Yes.
Excellent.
I worked with somebody who requested, was
It's a
interested.
very,
I'm like,
very
"Don't you play that?"
good thing.
Very cool.
Okay. On to next item on our agenda, item 7, unfinished business. 7A, budget impact, budget update.
Yeah, hi everybody, good to see you all. Budget impact, nothing really a significant report, we're kind of continuing to move on. However, budget update, we will have budget books available for you tomorrow. So I think Dee should send a communication if you either want to pick them up over central office, or if not, we can drop them off, just let us know from there. Preparing obviously for Saturday, and I think Wendy had talked about it earlier with special services being this constantly in flux, as is the budget, right? That we prepare the books, and as we do that, sometimes we get some additional, letters of, notices of retirements coming up, or, we'll start getting more information from Cigna and One Digital, who's kind of our consultant, and they'll start giving us more, not necessarily accurate, but better projections, because we start moving from trends to actual, right? And so that helps us hone in on there. So you'll probably see even on Saturday, we'll probably have a few adjustments already, and as that'll kind of continue on. Once again, the goal is always to come in, provide outstanding services for Farmington Public Schools, but do it as fiscally responsible as possible. So that is our impact.
I mean, you're gonna have a pretty long day Saturday, buddy.
Yeah. I'm ready for it.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Item 7B, policy update, second reading, action anticipated.
So this is a second reading. Any questions? I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the policies listed below for a second reading as presented? 4134 tutoring, 5117 school attendance areas, 6112 school day, 2410 and 2410A retention of electronic records and information, 4118.51 social networking, 5125 FERPA confidentiality and access to education records, 5134 student use of district's computer system, 5133 use of private technology devices by students, and 6146.11 weighted grading and calculation of grade point averages.
Motion? Second?
Any discussion? Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, policy repeals, second reading.
Again, a second reading. Any questions?
Anybody, questions, comments, concerns? Can I get a motion to repeal the policies listed below for a second reading? 5123, placement, promotions, acceleration, retention. 6116, equal educational opportunity. 6124, student publications.
Motion? Second?
Any other further comments or concerns? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Agenda item 8, new business. Approval of the educational specifications for the Westwoods roof project. Can I, I'll have you talk about it in a second.
Yeah.
Can I get a motion to approve the educational specs for the Westwoods Upper Elementary School roof replacement project as presented?
Motion? Second?
Discussion.
So just to give some background on that, the Westwoods Upper Elementary roof is original to the 2002 building, so it makes it 23 years old. It is a combination, by the way, a side note, this is why I enjoy this new job, because I'm starting to learn about burr roofing as opposed to EPDM roofing. The original one is built-up roofing, which is that kind of traditional, asphalt shingles, putting in, gravel, and this, more of a layered approach. And now the industry standard moves to this EPDM, which for those at home who care, with once again education thing, although this is more of the construction side, ethylene, propylene, DN, monomer, EPDM. Really just kind of looks like rubberized mats that they kind of roll out. And there's some advantages to that over kind of there. They should last a little bit longer than traditional BUR. And so somewhere in that staying, ideally somewhere in that, they say 20 to 30 year range, which obviously is a big range, so you try to figure somewhere in there, in that 25 year range. Part of just, long range facilities planning, this is, the schedulized for the variety of the buildings, and making sure we kind of maintain all the buildings. I think there's the logic that Farmington seems to have supported, that, you'd rather maybe do it a year early before a year late, right? Mm-hmm. Before, all of a sudden it starts, showing the wear and tear, and then you have the leaks, and then you have damage, and you have all sorts of other things. So, stay kind of proactively with that. And so this fits into the long-range plan of, the school facilities report. The specs that are in there, include kind of, beginning to end, for this project. So happy to answer any questions.
I just was reading the scope of the project, and the only thing that stuck out to me was it included testing for asbestos. So I know asbestos to me, I think 80s, 90s maybe, but something built in 2002. I don't know, is that adding a significant amount to the scope of it? Shouldn't we know if I think we should have known if there was asbestos when this was built, no?
Yes. Having said that, the reality is, you got these regulations that kind of come in, and it's just kind of part of the process. And so I don't believe it creates a significant, I think it's, the contractors and everybody know that's just kind of part of it and built into the project. But it's not the only time it would create a significant scope is if they found something, right? And,
there shouldn't be, yeah.
But, we wouldn't anticipate doing it, so it would just be standardized. They get some samples, they test it. We anticipate it coming back negative for the very reason you say, the 2002 roof,
yeah.
Shouldn't show it, and then they move on and move forward with it.
Okay. And then my only other question was, you said it's part of it's this BUR, and then part of it's the shingle roofing currently. What is the warranty, or how long did we anticipate that lasting? Was it a 20 to 30 year, or isn't shingles mostly 30, so we're kind of still in the range there, or do you know what the current warranties were for those?
So I did it until today. So I had talked with Sam a little bit about it, and he had talked about really within our municipalities that you can't, for a personal roof, you can get up to a warranty up to 50 years, but for municipalities and corporations, they won't give more than 20 years as far as the warranty. Now, once again, it could last longer than that, but they won't, cover more than 20 years on any type of warranty.
So both the BUR and the shingle part is at 20, so we're over that for both of those sections?
So we're over that.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item of new business, approval of updated policy 6153 and 6153A, field trips, first reading.
Yes, so this policy, 6153, requires a correction in the policy. The policy and the administrative regulations are not aligned, and our practice has always been in Farmington, due to timing of out-of-state competitions and things like that, that it's the superintendent or designee that approves overnight trips. You can imagine that we'd be having a lot of board meetings when a group then is going to a national level, and it's timely, it's something that's timely, and we need to get that approved. So just operationally, that's very difficult. But in the policy, it also says board approval for overnight. So we're just correcting that policy to align to the administrative regulations and our practice.
If you read it literally, we would have the, it says superintendent and the board. So we'd
Yeah.
have to meet for the trip to.
So it's just that, because my question was literally just that
that.
word of the whole thing. I was like,
Yeah.
are we missing a red line here or something?
Nope,
But
that's
that's
it.
all that we're just
That's
doing.
all we're
all,
doing.
yeah.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve updated policy 6153 and 6153A, field trips, for first reading as presented?
Motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're going to table item 8C and move on to item 9, consideration of Assistant Superintendent Finance and Operations Report. Dan?
Right. So you have the December financial statement. We apologize, we thought we would get the insurance numbers so we could kind of do a December and January and finally catch up, especially with the second Board of Ed meeting. However, those numbers came in a little bit late, and so we'll continue on the month behind. Once again, as we kind of talked about budget impact, we continue to progress pretty nicely as the trend typically is holding on. The salaries, we seem to hold up on that surplus a little better, and then services is always a little bit more. I did do some fact checking because I want to make sure I was accurate from last month when we talked a little bit about transportation services, and that the regular transportation line is actually pretty healthy in the black. It's what's really driving it once again is the special services, the out-of-district transportation, and some of the specialized transportation in district that's creating the deficit there. So I just wanted to kind of delineate that piece in there. And from there, like I said, we don't kind of talk about, as we mentioned, the IDEA, just to kind of always point out there are the grants and the funding that are in the back, and the insurance. From there, we just got recent for our insurance that we're trending, right where we need to be. We were, I think in October, it was at 108% of the kind of the projected, and then it came back down through December, so we're back to like 101. With the goal being right around, ideally it'd be below 100, but to stay kind of on there about 100. So we got it, back. And once again, this is another example of where you'll see where we move from trends to actuals, and that really kind of helps us with our planning for the financial for the remainder of the year. So happy to take any questions.
I have a question. Actually, I'll make it too. Thank you for getting back to me on this transportation. My quick question was, in negotiations and conversations, we talked about like co-sharing, co-riding, ride-sharing with other districts.
Yeah.
Have we explored that option, and that hopefully maybe could reduce some of the special service?
Absolutely.
charges?
We're constantly working with specialty. I was about to say specialty, especially the idea that they provide services for Avon. So having
Right.
that ability to kind of look, once again, the dynamic nature of placements. Sometimes where we have it, where they're like, oh, we have someone who's ready to go to school X, but by then we're actually trying to transition that student back into the and so once again it's that flux that we're trying to kind of coordinate, and some of it's logistical timing of getting them to programs and getting there, but yeah, it's something that we're continuing to do and to work with them to see wherever we can find opportunities to share resources and be more cost effective.
My second question, the excess cost line, does the transportation of special services also go towards that?
Yes, so when we get we apply excess cost, what we predict we're getting, what we're projecting we're getting. So I was referencing, like, we build our whole budget, and it's much higher than what you'll see. Because then what we do is we take certain lines and we reduce it by the excess cost amount that's projected. So it's already built into the budget that we're under budgeting because we expect the revenue. That's why it's so devastating to districts when what was predicted or projected is less than what, and that's what districts across Connecticut this year who had, might have built their budget on 60% or, 70%, and then they got 59%. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that they are now in deficit in the middle of the year. And many of my colleagues are facing that. We budgeted at 60%. So we were in good shape. We're very fortunate that, we take what they're projecting, but we also know that the state can never meet that projection because costs are just going up and they have a ceiling on excess cost. It doesn't kind of go up every year. It might go up in 1 year, but then it stays flat for 3 years. And there's a ceiling, so we're all getting less reimbursement because our costs, just inflation alone, is going up, so everything's going up.
So it just doesn't include, it isn't just programming, it includes transportation as
Because
well.
if it's
Okay.
related to special education, we usually go to those volatile accounts and reduce it.
Good.
And I will commend Wendy. Yes, we have more costs. I will definitely say this year, in this budget year, we have more costs than we had budgeted for. But Wendy's doing a great job on excess cost reimbursement and really, getting every single reimbursement possible. She comes with, great experience. So you'll see that, our budget would be much higher, but Wendy is doing just such a phenomenal job that we're, projecting not only for this year, but next year, higher excess cost reimbursement. Generally, we hope that that percentage could go up. But right now, we're going to probably stick with that same percentage we're going with 55.
We actually, for next year, we put it expecting a state reimbursement at 55%, just because once again, you don't want to get caught where you go 60, they go 55, and now you have to make up that 5% that you were building in. So, so currently, right now, we're at 55%.
Which is low.
Yeah.
I remember
It was never this low.
I remember we were arguing one year whether we should go to like 65%.
Yes.
Just to try to. It was one of the tough years too, like 09, 2010, 2011, something like that. We're like, so this is really, really low, and which is kind of doesn't make sense given the state surplus. But any other comments or questions for Dan?
Great update, thank you.
All those in favor, I need a motion to approve, I need a motion to approve the December 2024 financial statement report.
Motion, second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item is, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting to executive session at 9:13 PM as permitted by Connecticut General Statute, Section 1-225A, for the following purposes as allowed by Section 1-200, subsection 6, subparagraph A, that is discussion concerning an administrator's contract, Section 1-200, subparagraph 6, subparagraph A. That attendance in the executive session shall be limited to members of the Board of Education and the superintendent of schools.
Motion, second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are in executive session, 9:14. Can I get a motion for us to return from to public session at 9:32? Oh, sorry. Listen, I want to get out of here.
All right.
David Letterman, fix my face. Okay. Can I get a motion to return to public session at 9:32 PM?
Motion, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're back in session. All right, next item on the agenda is report of the board chair. Kathy, can you give us a really brief update on the Title IX stuff?
Sure. The 2024 final rule is no longer in effect, and the regulations now revert back to 2020 regulations. So per Shipman and Goodwin, we have switched back to the administrative regulations from 2020 version. Shipman and Goodwin is working on policy updates for any and all policies impacted by the Title IX final rule, and then now reverts back to the 2020 version. And these policies will come to the board for a first and second reading, but because I can change the administrative regulations, and that I can do that right away, which we've done, and that way we're all following the administrative regulations of 2020, so that we're following the expectations that are now in place. So if you have any questions.
I think, so practically speaking, the regulation, the policy that we adopted last summer is no longer, well, that portion of the language in the policy that was in compliance with the Biden administration's rule is no longer of any legal effect. So the policy as read is a little disjointed. Sounds like they're going to come up with a new policy that's clear and consistent with the recent court ruling. But for all intents and purposes, the Farmington Board of Education is now following via regulation the rule that was promulgated by that court decision out of Tennessee last month. So that's where we are. So we're effectively under rules that existed prior to the Biden administration's rule last summer.
Right. And the regulations are what we follow procedurally. So that's we couldn't do that with the final rule because there were no regulations or policies. So we had to wait for Shipman to create it, and then we had to do the first and second reading. Well, we have the administrative regulations from 2020, so we just replaced the 2024 final rule with the ones from 2020. But Shipman said, don't just revert back to the policies because they want to review them and they want to make sure that they're what they need to be. So then, similar to when, even though the final rule was effective August 1st, we didn't have our policy in place on August 1st, but we had to follow that law. It's very similar. We're going to follow the 2020, because that's where we are now with Title IX, and we're just waiting for Shipman to give us the policies to then go to policy committee and bring it to the board. But just so that everyone knows, we're following the current law for Title IX.
That's right.
So, am I oversimplifying it? Like before all of this, the last whole round, we were in compliance prior to all of that, like with the federal and with the state. So why don't we just go back to where we were prior to that? So, you know, I'm thinking about like billable hours and having all.
We did it. We are.
But the version of those policies. So don't we have them already? Because those were redlined, right? And then that got us to the vote that we went to. So why not just revert back to the ones that we redlined? Do you know what I'm saying?
Those policies were created in 2020. I think they want to take another look at it. It's not billable hours for us because it's the model policies. We pay for model policies. It's one fee for model policies. So we're just waiting for them to review them and release them out to us, and then we will bring them to the board for the first and second reading.
They're new model policy, or perhaps new. Right?
Yeah, it's part of the model policy book from Shipman and Goodwin.
Because remember, it wasn't just LGBTQ students that were affected, it was also students with pregnancy issues. Pregnancy was included as well. So I think what I want is, given the contentious nature of that rule and that policy, I want to make sure we're doing it right. But the fact of the matter is, we are now following, as I said we were going to do, we're following the law as it is today, as it's being interpreted today. We are following that law. And then, you know, we'll just tidy it up and tighten up the rules so our policy books reflect that. That's all. I don't see it any more difficult than that. In terms of other updates from me, I don't really have any, other than what was just discussed in executive session. I'll leave it there for now.
Look at the nice picture. That's your yearbook picture.
That's a good one. Jeez. I'll see you all Saturday morning. You know, 9 o'clock is when we get started. You know, it's going to be a tough day because we're going to have some really hard conversations, I think.
Where are we at?
Yeah, where is it going to be?
Black Box.
Black Box?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, make sure the heat's turned on the night before.
What's that?
Make sure the heat's turned on the night before.
Oh.
Because it's gonna be cold there in the morning if it isn't. And then, I guess that's all I got for you guys. Good meeting tonight, everyone. Lots of good questions, a lot of good discussions. We're adjourned.